Hey, what's going on, guys? Michael Ketchen here with another episode of the Michael Ketchen Show. No Matthew Hitchcock, because I got somebody even better today. Kailey, Kirker, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Kailey, you are my executive assistant.
Yes.
More importantly, why you're here today, you're a real estate investor.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You must be an instant millionaire now that you've done this, correct? Isn't that how it works?
Yes. No.
It's not how it
Absolutely
works.
not. Not at all.
So, wait a minute. How old are you again?
24.
So you're 24. You're not a millionaire, yet somehow you're a real estate investor. I thought, what about all the victim mindset and all the fucking crying and it's so hard to get ahead? How could you possibly have done that at 24?
I grinded for a really long time, and I strategized on how to get myself to this point, and I knew that I just needed to start. I had no idea what I was doing, still don't really know what I'm doing, but I just needed to start. So I just bought my first house and then bought a second one with your guidance.
Yes, my guidance, but you did all the work, I would say, most of it, and you deserve the credit for that. And I was so excited to have you sit down to talk about it today because, you know, one thing that's very near and dear to me is building wealth. And not necessarily for, I think when people think of wealth, they think of like, oh, all the toys. That's not what it is. It's the security of, you know, personal responsibility and taking care of yourself. And we take everything for granted, right? It's like I say all the time. If you know, at the end of the day, if you're working for somebody else and you have a job, I don't know if you're ever truly free or secure in the sense that you're relying on something outside of your control. It's not bad, of course. Don't quit, don't resign. But my point is, like I say all the time, we take our health for granted. We take our situation for granted. We take companies for granted that we work for. The economy changes. When you start to acquire assets to build wealth and set yourself up, you're living life on your terms, both good and bad. A credit to you, when I met you, you were just like attack mode. It's so refreshing to see someone that young, and it makes me excited, honestly, as an American, to truly see young professionals getting after it. What was it like? So I think you were 23 the first time we talked.
Yeah.
And you are such a little hustler. You were like, I want you to coach me in real estate. And I was like, okay, we're not going to do that because you own one home right now and I'm very expensive, rightfully so. But I think maybe there's an opportunity here. So I gave you a test without knowing it because, you know, it's just some advice from experience. And I said, hey, I kind of need an assistant. Why don't you give me a couple of hours? And then, like most things that I've learned, the way you attack it, you just blew it out of the water. And it got to the point where I think you hustled me a little bit because at first you were kind of like trading services. And I think after like 60 days, I was like, we got to hire her full time. Now I can't imagine, you know, the company without you. Fast forward, I remember our first conversation and you were figuring out, you know, you said, okay, how do I get started? Where do I go? And I don't know if you remember what I told you, but remember your freedom number?
Yes.
Do you remember how you calculated that?
Yes.
Can you walk everyone through that?
Sure. So for my freedom number, when we sat down in that coffee shop, you basically wanted me to take what I would need to live on for a month, and I need to make that somehow without working.
Yep.
So I was able to figure out that for me, right now, $5,000 a month is my freedom number.
Yep. That was awesome. And then we also looked at that chart. What most people don't realize, and this is a cool stat, like especially when you're trying to talk to people about building wealth, I have everyone put down their budget. It's the first thing we always do because everyone always assumes that they need more money to live on than what they actually need to get started. And that's why we do the whole activity, because I think it's like 55 or 65% of American spending is tied up in home and car. So everyone's always like, oh, you know, don't go to Starbucks. No, that doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, if you're spending a couple $100 a day eating out, sure. But the $5 latte isn't going to make you free. It's the housing and the car. And what you did with a house hack was a perfect example. You cut your cost of living from a few $1,000s a month with a liability, that first home.
Yeah.
And now by house hacking your second one, you basically gave yourself essentially a $40,000, $50,000 raise, and now you're living for free. So why don't you explain to everyone what a house hack means to you and how you did that?
Sure. So for my house hack, so we'll back up to my first house. So that was just the single family.
Already such a great co-host. You hear that, Matt? She's coming for you. Back it up.
I was just living there and paying for it. So nothing good coming out of that. So, I mean, I bought that with the intent to rent it out. I never planned on living there longer than 2 years. And even more, back it up, meeting with you, everything I did I met Mike from the gym. Everything I did from that was fully intentional. So I actually was going to try and train you as a client because I knew that I wanted to learn what you had to say. And I talk a lot with my clients. So I knew that you were already training with somebody. So I said, okay, I'll train his wife. So then I started training with Hannah. So then I started talking with her a little bit about it. And that's how I got to you. And then I set up that meeting. So then I was telling him about my first house, and I was just living there paying for it. And then he was telling me about the house hacking. So I said, okay. So I got a real estate agent that he recommended, Angela Dad. And we were looking for a really long time because I was a little bit picky because I had to live there.
Kailey's very bougie. For those who don't know, I learned all about fucking red bottoms the other day, I still don't know what the fuck that is, but some kind of shoe thing that my wife now wants. Thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't want anything that stacked on top of each other, and I wanted either a duplex or 3. I mean, Mike wanted me to go for 4, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't know if 4 would have been good. But then we found one at first, and we put an offer in. Our offer was accepted. At the inspection, the septic failed inspection. So we were quoted around $50K worth of work that needed to be put into the house. And we asked the owners, the sellers, to cover it. They said no. So I pulled out of that deal. And then I started looking again. We found this house. I actually found it through Mike's friend, Rusty. He posted it on Instagram. So I said,
remember this. Yep.
Angela, I want to go look at this. So we went, and I really liked it. So we put an offer in. There was a bidding war, but we ended up winning the bidding war, $20K over. But it was still only $480, which was in my price range. And so we bought that. So it's 3 units. I'm living in 1, renting out 2. That covers my mortgage there, and then cash flowing off of my single family home.
I absolutely love it. And there's so much there to unpack because what you did that was intentional. Well, 1, I've never been so proud of you setting it up that way. That was amazing seeing the chessboard. I wish more people need to think about, being intentionally consistent. I talk about that a lot. It was like you saw an opportunity, and you definitely chose the right client because training Hannah is a lot more fun than training me. I basically whine and complain the whole time. Shout out to Hannah. She's very impressive at the gym. Me, not so much, but we're getting there. But I remember when we met and we were talking about the house hack and we were able to flip it through because I think you even just rented out your primary. Yeah, like I think you're making about $1,000 a month. The lease is about, I think about $1,000 a month. And I remember like, you're not even giving yourself enough credit. There's so much behind the scenes. Like that house, when you first bought it, needed some work. So you strapped on your boots, you got after the work, you fixed that house, you've now rented it out. What I really want to emphasize here that you did that was genius. You didn't just go out and find any side of a duplex. For those at home whining, like this deal wasn't off market. This deal wasn't through a referral. You took action. You saw somebody post something on social media. The house was on Zillow.
Yeah.
And you didn't show up and see the problems. You show up and saw the solutions because if you solve the problems, you would basically be able to house hack and eliminate your biggest expense. So at 24, 1, just shout out to you because we need more of that. Now, with that said, this is going to be a catapult for what's next. So you said so far you don't know what you're doing. I would argue that. There are some resources out there. Have you decided to get any podcast books? What else would you recommend for young people trying to get in their first real estate deal?
I mean, I've found a lot of advice from Bigger Pockets, honestly, the forum there. One thing that I was just trying to recently figure out is that there's no like meters on anything. So how do I split up electricity and like utilities?
I'll have a great tip for that.
Okay.
So actually, we'll geek out here for a second for real estate. We saw you people on the poll, so calm the fuck down. All right. So in real estate, a way you can boost NOI or a way you can up your revenue is called RUBS. It's Ratio Utility Billing Systems. Every state is different for RUBS. For example, we invest in Ohio, Missouri, New Hampshire, other states. Ohio, for example, you cannot bill back water without an individual meter in the unit. New Hampshire, you can ratio it. So we can talk about that offline, but in our bigger private buildings, we set up RUBS. And what you do is you take a percentage and you can bill back each unit based on their average consumption for their percentage. And that can boost your NOI. And in your case, boost your cash flow, boost your rent. We can talk about all that.
Okay.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So what else? Keep going on that deal.
Some other things that I've used, definitely Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which funny enough, shout out to my dad, but you're definitely my rich dad and he's my poor dad. So it's like you
know what the two redheaded things, like people are going to start taking this serious.
know,
Long lost,
literally.
I do not have, well, I hope I don't have any long lost kids out there, but we don't know. I have some explaining to do at this point.
Like he's definitely good, he's well off, but he is conservative and he does the 401k and he
The scam?
Yeah.
It's okay, you could say it.
He looks for the safe jobs and he was always just like pushing job safety, which is fine. But I never wanted to do that. I was never interested in that. I was watching him grind so hard that I was like, that doesn't really seem appealing to me. I don't know why you would want to do that.
Isn't that so? I want to go deeper on that though, because
Yeah.
you just said something that we should discuss. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I would argue you're an incredibly hard worker. I think the difference is your thinking. And when you work and you think and you're working towards a goal and you're working towards a mission you believe in, it's not that it doesn't feel like work. We all have bad days. I'm sure we're going to get into it later, but I'm sure there's plenty of times like this fucking guy, like, just make up your mind. Stop being a nightmare. But when you're thinking and you're moving and you feel valued and you're part of a team and you're working towards a goal, I think that's good hard work. And what I like to say all the time is, and this isn't indicative of your dad or even like the way my mother and they were raised. Like, I think a lot of times people confuse hard work with good work. And hard work can be physically backbreaking. It can be something that's a means to an end. But a lot of people have what I would call a scarcity mindset. And if you don't understand the way I think money works in this country, and I would argue it does with, debt-based society, yada, 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 you're trying to uncondition a muscle. And good on you for pushing back and seeing that, because I was the same way. That was actually a very vital moment in my upbringing. I watched my mother work 2 jobs. I watched her raise 3 kids by herself. And she worked hard. She worked harder than anybody I know. I still remember the hard holidays. I remember up until I was, I think, 9 or 10, she couldn't afford a car. We used to walk everywhere, right? I mean, walking to Little League, walking to get groceries. It wasn't hard work. I mean, she went to 2 jobs. It wasn't good work. It wasn't a means to an end, to assets. And you wanted something different. What I tell everybody is it's not, you can have your own opinion on the 401k. You can have your own opinion on a W-2 job. But what I would challenge everybody out there to do, and please send them to me on Instagram, blast me, do whatever you want. If you can find me any billionaire or anyone who's basically a couple hundred millionaire off a W-2 job, send them my way. I don't think they exist per se.
Yeah.
If you're not a CEO with a lot of stock options, I mean, think about the comp packages. It's an illusion. It really is an illusion. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to live an intentional life, you have to play the game. You have to play assets, not liabilities. You don't get there by a 401k. You get there by investing. And it's rich dad, poor dad, like you talked about. And again, credit to you. I give that test to everybody. And I've talked about it before. The first thing I'd say, because I mean, you see my email. People want to meet all the fucking time. So my test is, hey, we'll talk. You ever heard of rich dad, poor dad? And it's either always no or, yeah, I read it a long time, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, well, hey, read it again and hit me up in a couple weeks when you finish it, because you can read that book fast. Yeah. Write down any questions you have and we'll talk. 95% of the time, that is the last time I hear from that person, and I get off scotch-free because they didn't waste my time.
Yeah.
But if you read that book and you're in that mental shift like you were, looking for something else, it's not that you're going to have all the answers, but it gets your wheels turning. I mean, what was your experience like when you wrapped it up? Because, I mean, you literally, the same playbook I'm talking about online on this podcast, I gave to you, I gave to everybody. You actually followed it. And in under a year, when did you start? I remember when you started.
June.
Oh, my God. In under a
6
year, in
months.
under 6 months, you're financially free from your first house hack at 24 years old.
Yeah.
So, 1, what excuse do the rest of you have? And 2, that's amazing. Talk about when you read the book and some of those other kind of tips when it went that way.
Yeah, so when I read the book, I actually really enjoyed it because I feel like because I am younger, a lot of people that I know don't think like me.
Yeah.
So I feel like I get very frustrated talking with people my age. So it's kind of freeing to read that book and see that other people do think like me.
Must be nice.
Just older people. So that's why all my friends are way like 40, but that's fine. But basically, reading the book was really nice. And then when I was going through that and understanding, okay, like that's how I think, I totally agree with everything that he's saying, like same, super good book. I was always training very wealthy clients. So I was always talking to them, and we would talk during our sessions, as you probably talk with your trainer during your sessions. And I would ask questions because I'm curious. And it was always that they were making their money from real estate. So I had one client, and her husband was a lawyer, and he was telling me he mega mansion, big money. Yep. And he was telling me, yeah, he makes money from being a lawyer. That's a great job. But all of his money comes from real estate investing. And then almost every single client that I knew, no matter what they were doing for their job, they had real estate, and that's where they were making their money from. So being able to connect that and being, okay, they have this mindset with the rich dad, poor dad, and I'm learning and I'm watching what they're doing, and I'm learning and I'm watching what my coworkers and my other W-2 people are doing and how different they are and how successful and where they're moving for, and how I'm sure everybody else is successful, but not where I want to be successful wise. It was very eye-opening to see the contrast between the two. And I feel like I'm always paying attention and I'm always observing and I'm always learning.
Yep.
If I'm in the room with anybody, I'm listening to what they're saying and I'm almost analyzing it. I like psychology. So I'll pay attention to the way that wealthy people talk, and I'll pay attention to the way that not wealthier people talk.
Yep.
And I'll kind of think and analyze what brought them to that and why they're saying that. And I really like to be able to see if they're saying it to say it or if they're playing the game. And
you pay so much attention.
It's interesting to
it.
watch the game because I literally watch people play the game right in front of my eyes.
Yep.
And it's like the other person is just eating it up and taking it in and like being blindsided, I guess.
Well, I mean, you've heard me say it repeatedly, right? Like, words are worthless.
Yeah.
It's all actions.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what anybody says. It's so easy to say something. It's a whole different thing to do something. And you've just, in our one-on-one coaching and going through, it's actions. Everything is actions. Whenever, because I'm the same way. Whenever I'm evaluating a person, I'm not, whatever you say, I don't really give a shit. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are you doing? Because your actions are everything. If you say you're going to do something, did you do it? Did you deliver? And then I got a couple other thoughts that jumped out, but I don't want to lead you. What are some things, what did you notice? Because that's very observant when you're talking to two different people. Because I have a couple thoughts, but before I go there, what are some things you notice with those two demographics? What stands out to you from a person kind of betting on themselves, accumulating wealth, really that I would tell it kind of thinking, I don't want to say at a higher level because it's not, again, it's not an attack, but it's more like taking control of their life, I guess the way I would say it.
Yeah.
What are some things that stood out to you personality-wise?
They always were just problem solving. It's just problem solving, really. Everybody else, they'll complain a lot and they won't do anything about it. They're just solving their problems.
Yep. There's a lack, and that's what I was gonna say. For me, it's extreme ownership. There's a lack of accountability, and you'll notice when you get around really successful people, they don't talk about others. They don't blame or victim blame, and they take ownership for everything that happens to them. And we've tried to build inside the company, inside Commonwealth Collective, that's one of the core values. And if you'll notice, all the core values we have, trust but verify, extreme ownership, they all tie back to that. Because we're trying to get our entire staff and our entire team, if we move in that one direction, it's not about being perfect. See, I think it's where people get it wrong. They're like, oh, it's so easy because you have money. Well, no, because everything we're talking about, there's good and bad.
Yeah.
The minute you have something worth taking, someone's coming to try to take it. And especially if you're going to get in real estate, I can make you a few promises. One, you're not a real landlord until you get sued because it's got to happen the longer you're in this business. Just think about it. It's a scale, right? You're going to have bills come due that are amounts of money you can't even imagine. You're going to have risk. You're personally guaranteeing debt all the time. So it's not that it's easy, but it's a conscious decision when you're an entrepreneur to live life on your terms. And I always say both the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the reason the good is so good is because the bad can be so bad. It's about to be Christmas in a couple of days. When this airs, it'll be after Christmas. You'll be checking your phone. I'll be checking my phone. We'll be watching it. It's a different, there's no off switch because you're always on, right? But that goes back to both ways. And good on you for noticing that, because that's, when I try to tell people, it's like you can have whatever life you want. But if you say, hey, I want to make this much a month and I want to travel and I want to do this, and then you're watching fucking Netflix every night and you're not going to any meetups and you're not going on podcasts and you're not working out, you're not getting in the room. I mean, think about what you said at the start of this. You were strategic enough to take advantage of 10 to 12 different moves ahead. Anybody there could have done that.
Yeah.
Anybody could have thought that through. You saw an opportunity without knowing which way it was going to work out, and you did it.
Yeah, I think that just everybody thinks it's impossible or too hard or too something.
Scarcity mindset.
Yeah, so I always have just thought like other people do it, so they're doing it, so there has to be a way to do it.
Yeah, have you ever thought? Because I was talking to a buddy of mine about this the other day. We're trying to do like a whole thing on hiring. He's trying to find. kind of scary because he said he's trying to find Michael Ketchens, and I was like, that's kind of terrifying to think about. So he had me psychoanalyzing myself, and I brought you up on the call, and I won't get too personal, but I brought you up, his COO, and myself, and what we did. There's a test we're doing called. Have you ever heard of the Gallup Strength Link Personality Test?
No.
I'm gonna have you do it in a couple weeks. I'm doing mine today if I get time. It's like 30 minutes, and he had his COO do it, and our upbringings between the three of us are all similar. Our relationship with money, to a certain point, I think is similar. And then there's personality traits. I would say a little, ADHD. A little. You're definitely more detail driven than I am, but there's a little chip on the shoulder. But the big one that I don't know if you ever thought about this, but I talked to him about this was exposure. And what I've always found is in my life, every time I level up, I meet someone that's ahead of me. And it's not that, I mean, you can say a goal's big, but when you meet a person doing it, it's like jet fuel. I just go. I'm like, oh, you can live that. You can buy a plane. Like you can fly private. Like, boom. Does that kind of play a role? Do you think the minute you see something being real, does that change for you or anything?
Definitely. It seems so much more attainable. Perfect example. Have you heard of High Rocks?
What the fuck? What? Is this like, Kailey, do you know who you're talking to? I smoke cigars and buy real estate.
Yeah,
I don't know what the fuck a high rock is.
High Rocks is...
high rocks? A high rocks?
High Rocks. HYROX. So it's basically a fitness race.
Yes. Yes, Kailey. Yes.
I thought you'd be
This
signed
amazing
up
white
already.
chocolate body that I have knows all about the high rocks and everything.
Yeah, so it's a fitness race, and it's pretty
Attacking me
hard.
on my own podcast. That's fucked up.
It's a lot of cardio, and it's pretty trendy right now. But one of my coworkers just did it, so I was like, "Oh, okay, she can do it. I can do it." So I just signed up for one.
God, I hope she doesn't hear this. She just attacked your poor coworker.
I mean, she definitely is going to do it 10 times better than I did, but
This isn't the thing Becky just did, is it?
yes.
You realize that woman worked. I need her on here. She
Grinded.
actually is the only female I've ever met in my life who terrifies me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
She's a psychopath.
She has a crazy mental strength.
Yeah, works out at the gym. Like, she's like on some David Goggins shit. Like, I don't know what she's doing. I actually messaged her the day of the race. I was like, hey, good luck. Not that you need it, because I feel bad for the rest of the competitors.
I know.
God, she calls me out in face. Like when I'm in that class, she starts yelling at me. Like one day I was
She's
out in the
so
lobby
scary.
talking. She held open the door in front of the whole class. Are you coming back in? I was like, well, that's embarrassing.
I know. So sweet, but so scary at the same time.
Yes, because then she's like a yoga instructor. She does all like the weird like hippie shit and like sound bath shit.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
High rocks. HYROX.
You should try it out.
I'm gonna high rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna high rock. All right.
But we'll see how that goes.
Try
But
my
same
mind.
example as that, seeing that somebody else did it, it makes it more attainable. in
Yeah,
my
well,
head.
100%. And that goes back to the mindset. I don't know if anyone's interested or not, but now I tell everybody, you run my life. You and Hannah, I would be lost without the two of you. And I'm in a group. Shout out to the 50. Shout out to Matt Francois and Ian Bishop and Brandon Turner. And while we connected, when I joined the group, I think I was one of like 3 members. You know, one of the onboarding questions was, who's your personal assistant? What's their contact? And I was like, well, this is awkward.
Yeah.
Because I don't have one. And I was like, why do I need an assistant? How much change can that make? I cannot imagine my life without you now. Truly, so don't go anywhere.
Okay.
But my point is, what is it? I don't know what you want to talk about, but I will tell you that it's been an absolute game changer for me, because on the business side, and Dan Martell, we should link, we'll have to ask producer Jake if we can link to books, like on an Amazon store or something, because Buy Back Your Time, if you're listening to this, you should definitely listen to Buy Back Your Time with Dan Martell. But what he talks about is, if in your own organization, I've talked to you about this before, but if you realize what your time is worth, as you're growing a company, you have to delegate more and more and more and more. And we've come up with a system that I've destroyed and rebuilt about 12 times. But you're kind of like the wall. Like, to get to me now, it's like, and it's amazing how many people will try to go around, under. Maybe we can tell some horror stories when I'm like, we just got someone email today. He's not available till end of February. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the end of it. Obviously, you got all these things going on. You're going through it. When I met you at the gym, I think you were still in college. So did you know you wanted to be in real estate then? Like, what was that like at that time? Because that must have meant you were in school during the Chinese virus, the fake, the scamdemic.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know if we can say those things. YouTube might shadow ban us, but we'll let Danielle deal with that.
yeah, I definitely didn't know that I wanted to do real estate, but I knew that I was chasing a higher income. So when I was in college, I went to Plymouth State University, which thank God I did, because my top school was UTampa, and it's a private school, so they didn't give me financial aid. So I would have been 60 grand in debt if I went to U Tampa. Because I went to Plymouth, I got a full ride, and I was only there for my freshman year.
Hold on 1 second, because I want to go back, because again, can't throw these nuggets out, not give yourself credit. How many people would have been like, well, I just want to go have fun in Florida, and then cry and say, please, government, taxpayer, forgive my debt because I made a poor decision with no personal, back to what we talked about, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? You made a personal choice. Hey, I'm going to stay up here in New England, and I promise anyone who's not been in New England, Tampa's a lot better weather.
Yeah.
So you made a good choice. I just want to give you a shout out for that.
Thanks,
so keep going.
yeah.
So you're a freshman
My dad
year
was
at
huge
Plymouth.
on that too.
Your dad was?
Yes.
Shout
he
out to Mr.
wanted me
Kirker.
to
There we
stay
go.
and
All
go
right,
there.
good job. All right.
But so my freshman year, I was at Plymouth State. I hated Plymouth State. Didn't want to be there. I wanted to be in Florida.
Okay.
But I went against my will. And I was studying public health. I had a major in public health, a minor in health, and another minor in business admin. And once we got into my sophomore year, I went to Florida on spring break to visit my cousins, and Corona hit. So COVID.
Yep.
Coronavirus. And basically,
You can call it the scamdemic. It's okay.
I almost got stuck in Florida, so they were closing everything down. So I had to book a earlier flight to go home. So I left Florida, and after that, we couldn't go back to college. So for second semester,
They just shut the whole thing down.
yeah, I had to go up, get all my stuff, move out. We all had, like, the roommates had to move out at different times. We couldn't go at the same time. And finish the second semester online at home, which was
Okay.
a joke. No, the teachers weren't teaching and the kids weren't learning.
I would argue they don't teach at all, but that's a
True.
separate conversation.
So then, come my junior year, when it was time to go back, they wanted everybody to be vaccinated, and they wanted you to quarantine while you were up at college. So basically, we were doing online classes in our dorm room. So I said, that's stupid. And I'm not getting the shot. So I didn't go back to college. So I had to sign a whole thing to pull myself out and finish at home online.
Yeah.
So to this day, I still haven't had any of the vaccines or anything.
Good job. And that goes back to, and this will definitely get us in trouble, but I don't care. What pissed me off is the whole my body, my choice thing. And I'm good, bad, indifferent. I agree. I am on the side of my wife, and I would never tell a female what to do with her body. That's her body. It ain't my body. I thought it was convenient argument, though, when, a couple months later, Roe versus Wade comes up, and the same people who are now having outrage just got done telling me to put a fucking diaper on my face
Yeah.
and what shot to put in my body.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened there, but good on you at that age to even have the backbone to stand up to that. And again, back to that problem mindset. And that's the theme that I want everyone to kind of take away with this. It's like, and I said this to people before. I don't know if it's because I was raised by a single mom or whatever it is, but like I don't know. I don't think of people's age. I don't think of like men versus. I don't think any of that. I'm just, if you're in action and you're doing a good job and you're in that position, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And when you find high performers, when you find people, you can learn for the most part. Not every job. I mean, like you probably couldn't be Elon Musk, but you can learn pretty much any skill. You can't teach character. You can't teach integrity. You can't teach the intangibles. And the bigger we get as a company, we're really in the business of human capital. And what I mean by that is I keep coming back to those things. The more you find the people that you just want to get them on the bus because they're the right people, you'll figure out what the right seats are after, but they got to get on the bus. And I mean, just in a few months with you, think about everything we just talked about, the house hacking, the executive assistant now taking on the short-term rentals, which you're interested in. You're just crushing it with that, plus the executive assistant roles, helping out with some of the PM software. I mean, just more responsibility, right? Higher performer. And I think that's great. So before we get out of here, the question I'm going to put you on the spot with, it's 5 years from now. What does day-to-day, what does a Tuesday look like in the life of Kailey 5 years from now?
Well, in 2 years from now, I want to move again. And then 2 years from then, I want to move again. So every 2 years, I want to move and buy another house hack.
Okay.
So hopefully by then, I would have what? It depends how many I buy each time. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 properties of my own.
Yep.
So hopefully I'm just thriving, working for Michael Ketchen, running my own little business.
Yeah, I like it. We can make that happen. Kailey, I can't thank you enough for being here. And the episode drop. It's going to be a great one. And as always, bet on yourself.